يكأي يخستيني لتكت يوهان قل تشيش وشين خستي يا هاي ختنجي داتي جكختوني يا أوي يا خانا neek خخو دات جداسا يت أختوسكو أداتي خكختي لآتي إتخ يا أدي يا ووش كتو جيلي يا هاي ختنجي يا تليد خاقينخ perfective خا future يوساي ساق يا أوه واسا أتبني واسا أتكبني يا أوه أختوسكو أداتي يخكختي لآتي خاخوان إيش دشكلنيجي قل تشو كشكلنيجي دي أكاوشكيد خاء كلي إيدي كاقونيكو ساق خاء أختوسكو أداتي جكختوني وجين قل تشيش يا تليتكي هو أوي دات يتختتن كاخوان إيش كشكشاني وان قنينز دو هيتي أيا نخوا قوخ لا نختلين يدو ساق أيا أخيتي يا أوه وان قنينز دو هيتي أيا أدي نخ قخجن قدو إيني جخوانين هستو إيني جخوانين دخخ أيا أدي أو سقوخ أقا أوي نيل دي أو سقوخ كاخوان إيش هيتي ييخ شكشاني أوي دكيلك كو أوي كاخوان إيش وشام أجوي قول هستي تواسقو وجيني هستي ونين يا تتلق أوي أدادي جتونين وان قنين سليل قاقينخ أقا قاوتو ونيك سلنجت قينخ وان قنين سلنجت قينخ أقا تليل قاقينخ آدي جاقو دخ آيي وان قنين زدادي جتونين تخلد زي أوي كاسكي يختنجي قاقوشين تخ يسدقوي أدي يوس قلت جنيه قاشكلنيك قتلان يختنجي هكي تواسكو قنخوي قتلان وان قنينز إتخ يا هاي جنيه شكشاني هاينا كاني واسا يتيخ هاي جنيه أدخي قنختو تخوتل قشق جنكات كتيخوي هستو كتاقو يوتين جانوي تيختيني هسجيوني واسا أختويك اشتقا خدتي قنخوي هستو يدخ يا أدي أخي هس أولتوية قا واسا داسا هس أوليخ قني أيا قجي ديك أختوتي يا هاي جني ويخوخ يل شكلنيكي يل قتلاك قا أدتك يس شكلنيكي تسو أدات يجتوني وان قنين زيستين تسو هاوسنيخ هاي ختنجي داسا أكخ كاوشخت وان قنين جس هستو قيت خايا كخشخت قنش تشيش يوهان ഖുകാഹാ أدوسا دي تواسكو neek خو دخ آي يجي يتيجا
JHC would to a good at Asliach ku takatcha sitin would to sitin away has Asliach Kadain has ya atus queen Klaka away at Asliach ku the yetki takadushu talk away has to tago Achyetki tsu Kuich ga away wush kanach would to the art Akrak away Jesus the cut dahin katago Gulchi.
Okay, gwyl cheese.
Cheese.
You had so you sitting again. What at she?
X'úx'u chwasatín just kashuk túnach chwasatín chat Yak echa kachtín gwyl chi ha ein cínigi.
Gulchi. Akiti de she.
Yak echawe, Zantiki yini, a one kaya, aye utiin. Oh, Tom, Uchawe Zina. Hey, Yadu Uhan. Gwashwe Zina tlesh atua oshku ha yukatangi. Zina ye and the cage. Glatka yukatan. Glatka chinach, yukaita. Wash ye. Conspiracy theory, you do sa. Kechosaku wasakach to sa. Well, cheese. Took again.
Vaccine. Was it do a thing nach the Yahtzee
Yatsin.
or the
Klingit enach Yatsin, Kleidka enach Nick Glennon.
Yesh yatzin aya desai. Yatzin aya Kleidkach enach living. Ak tatzin, actually, ak tat.
vaccine.
We hicht, gwatli saku tag. We ak aya would the dich. Hasu would the dich. Tag itiko a hasu lala. Gwatka awe would the dich. Huj. Hicht katag ako a. Hasul would lala aga. Ataswu good. Tlikudzi. Ak tatzin. Yes.
Vaccine. Goodness cheese.
Tukke, we neek kuku.
Ena because it's an English sentence that needs to sing out in Tlingit, and the words that I found for it just feel so clunky. I know it's not right, but maybe with some help, it can be better. First, in English, she dances her love of dance. It is almost like praying. That first sentence is good because you need to use a classifier to change the root ale, which is object intransitive, to a transitive verb. So I know that I wanted to say something like, du at echi at sachanich, du ahlach ech. So I tried to slip that L classifier in there into ahlach ech so that it would have both a subject and an object. And then the second sentence, it is almost like praying. There's some nice Tlingit for that. And I didn't know whether I should say uaya there or something else. Te atlani khan. Well, how'd that fire get in there? Oh. Te atlani khan yati. It is like a firestone. And there are almost no words that I could find for precious stones in Tlingit, not even garnet, which is right smack in the middle of Tlingit ani, and they must have known all about it. And if you can't find garnet, you're sure not going to find ruby. So it is almost like praying. Well, I don't know about that one. I'm sure I know there's a word for praying and almost. So there we are. Go figure. Ach idashi. I mean, translating that in bad Tlingit is something that would get somebody put on an island by themselves forever. So I need to ask for help before they come and get me.
Here's what's a good quality. One canines way achi yukatangyacheti with late ka yukatangi, Klidzi ayak katunik, Lingit kenach. Golchat ka a day at echt to wasaku, yeah. Would do the teen. Chu or yak a gag echeti a day at echt, yeah.
Yeah, so that's sheesh. Yeah, that flows like a river. I'll learn to say that before next time.
A day at echt to wasaku, yeah. Awe would do the teen. Chu or yak a gag echeti a day at echt, yeah. Kanach je keegoed ogen. Je keer je jene ha je getangidaat. Gilchish. Je keer.
Poetry acheti Łukatáin x'úx'u gunalchish.
Oh yeah, away. Faintly. Ja, dazu. Jashugu je getang. Klesh unasle. Klesh unasle. Gwash yata. Gled kach inach almost. Ka won't be long. Jashugu Klesh unasle khatu. Klesh unasle khatu und. They almost shot me. Klesh unasle. Hundaki hiti degach te kuch. It won't be long before we go to the store. Depends how it's used, but can work both ways. And klesh unasle can be said like 10 different ways, including klein kle.
Yeah, Hane, I've been in conversation with an excellent speaker who used flesh unale to say that his house wasn't far away in distance from the place where we were talking. Is that good Tlingit too?
Yep, same. So it's the opposite of nashliye, far. Klesh unasle, it just means all of those, can mean all of those things. It's so interesting. And some of it is because time and space works the same in Tlingit, but then other is just because it has this, there's just certain phrases that have these just special functions. It's like 10 different things depending on how you use it. Which is probably why there's so many ways to say it.
Plainly, is it a dialect difference or is it just different use?
It's a good question. We'll probably have to have someone check it out. I know it's been documented a bunch of different ways. The gal. I'm gonna put something in the chat just so I remember to show you a little later. But
the context for that Tlingli was Tlingli Łukaháa yachiti, almost like a star. So, but I've heard or I've used Tlingli more, I think.
Yeah, there's all the ways. I got it. Kleshli, klesh unasle, klesh nasle, kleintle, kleshle. So it led me to think of this one, which is, we'll go find it. So I used to like to talk with George and Marge and ask, what are things you don't hear very often? It was inspired by Ḳukaháa, Fred White, who used to help run these meetings with a bunch of elders with Gold Belt Heritage Foundation. And he used to ask them that. And they'd say "Tzatqoyeka" and other stuff that we learned how to use. And "Qatiyi" was a fun one because it'd say, no one knows how, somehow, despite the odds. So, and then the sentence they gave me was "Tatken kawashu achkeik qatiyi hu shta out duck," which is kind of a fun one. I mean, not that fun, but it's sometimes fun. You know, my nephew was always drinking. It's a wonder how he sobered up. And that would work for nieces as well. But qati is a fun one. It's like nobody knows how it happened, but it happened. It's like these little things to learn how to use. Like, well, I thought of that because like somehow we figured it out. Jeez. Țukaháa, qathuj. Qanakhwe kayi qatangi. Ah.
King George Man ani dah weni. Yusikugi adusa shkunt uwagut. Kega at Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Kliat ge ya zisk wish kun kahali awa klich. Aga awish kun yi uwagut. Wish kunwa ka we ku at latuwu klach kunach has yawa jage. Klek skunwan du kla amsitin ka awa ik atli yadu zisk ha chot uwagut. Gwaf klek gau shiwachich sat gayeka Shadahain Saskatoon Watchwan Yadzisk Kati has our shot. Kleka Kainach arrested. Agawe Zisk away has to watch one Kayi Yikt has amsinuk Kaduneshli day has amsikuch. Yidat we Zisk at Gutuk ye yeti. Has to litzin we adat ki klesh aswudichan ye khoji with zisk ye gugenk wudichan we it tin hooch away.
Good cheese.
Ha'a Ḳukaháa du tua seguon ausletu we just
Gwalli yaw qatsu ya qurtaki. Qatsu artu wasuguri yaw letu. Ya qurtaki zisko Ḳukaháa. Ya ha'ani data we wan qanins ya neek. Ya tayakhaya qurtati. Kashkun ya yaki ziska ya yeti. Ya ya chakut ani chakuta hasti tawassakushkuni kheti. Wan qanins tlut qaq qat chatasa. Wan qawan qanins with zisk. Hitladat qaq we khawaqi. Has our want qa atunakho has our good. Ya akawa wat. Shukhaya qaqwitaya. Wan qanins khossaku hoots qatsik. Hasakawa akwe qahat tunakhoy hasayawa gook. Ya hahiti data we klay dihin. Gwashwits ik di tawasaku hahiti uguti. Akawa ak. We atwadid a kuchu at qahati. Shukwa aya gwashakawa ak. E itcha we qahati. with a to a car arc. With to suku, with the tuck away ha hiti ding, ha kaushakut away to gin. Chosatin, when kut a kaye wuti, a kos iti. Ye owa, ya kalkes, ho owa a shteich. He chosaku gwash, ha kos ek a shteich. Ye owa gartu sa ballet. Ye owa di tosaku. Ade aya koneka kosakur. Ya akshatka a hiti dach wushich. Chadasa away, hanakwu good. Gwash. He chosaku gwash atchak isani. Du gees. Du ji ye butin. Du yat aya outlaken. Du teeg aya chosatin. Tzig chus iti ha hiti da. Tlell has awas ku chawake ko a tlell ulchin. Wait zis ko a gwash awas ku yidat. Yak crack the code chatzati. Ilchish.
Was ach eat Ďukaháa.
Ah, ilchish.
Visitinga?
Ah,
Okay.
Yak away.
A little bit cut off on the side here, but neek achjiwu hajias. Yanik kuku yoga journal dach haina kawanik kachwe at hajias. Kachwe tut awe atlain antioxidants dach yeati. Atua dach kachwe you awe we ku'u dujias has neek diabetes ka Parkinson's neek teen has to eat wudishi. So ha take ka ha tugu kakwe has eat wudishi nuch. Achawe yak at hajias you we Harvard spoon claim has ha akawanik. Chatko we kachwe ach eat wudishi sutat kachat sigit nuch. Achawe kachwe itina chatyati ega klapyagi. Guk yidina guk atlain at yeshya yech. Now yahyati hajias you Yuhan dakwa kachwe sa itua sigu yidinai. Nabobke, Starbuckske, Ethiopia dach, Costa Rica dach. Dakwa sa kachwe itua sigu. Gulchish.
Gonna cheese.
Tim Horton, yeah.
Sunny.
Yak Ethiopian dach tua sigu.
E kahwe washin aya.
Clay. Oosh, if only. It's a
Fancy stuffs.
yeah, wear fancy stuffs. Yeah, tea.
Sunday. Ach kukatlay Jide kakosain.
Akakasaha, akakasaha, wekahwe. Nike testatia nachsa achtua uskoyanik. Gunchish, ye awa khatko altikat yedach aya achtuasaku akahwe. Trade you do a sa kush to sechen. You do a sa we kleidach klech. Yashtikat yedach awe kahwe. Ya achas has our in. Yaka achit has our ach. Achit ach has our sawu. Ye awe. Yake achot e. Ya adatawe chotu. New York ye hawutian. Ha yake kahwe achtuasagu chot e. Ega genki tlidzi at jawe we niklein hachuye ti. Ya hetrasa oti we subway a yikdewe we at gitayi we at what it's a kuchu at wash at gitayi steen ka. Akawe click achot a devotion you do a sock. Ake. Ya hilo aya hast we Hawaii. Kanachwe ake kahwe. Kona kahwe we cook. Ke kope kanachwe jitidana ai awe. Chatqaq tlachadach atletzin. Tlechach to oshku we dana. Kut just kutchwashiti. Ya ka'u kahwe. Kanachwe ake. Ka kinawe adekatutletzin. Ya sharpen slave you do a sa klech hundakihiti. Akayati. Gwash klech yadashi. Eka ka darkundana. Hetwa sa uti. One qanins we kona itu agesiku we kona kahwe. Ja uski gwesh. Gwash nasjin kat dana hasti tuasaku. Ye awe. Shitzi koa. Chot we yak kahwe. Stumptown too you do a sock we akutu ani. Hastu kahwe awe akayaketsu. Gunchish.
A dark roast kunachaweach tuati. Ka ya jididana kahwe washini tinachat yati. Gwalnawea kachat wuch ingach gachtu. Ako akunach jididana owe gwal dachadushu hanadana owe we washin. Ha
Breville Scholarship agakudziti. Ha iti dishu ha yuchatangiti. Ha guchsenech ha gachisenech kahwe atlechies. Kahwe outlechies. Yake Johan, goodness cheesh. Yana 8.
Lily Hope Neek. I'm going to share my screen. Is that it? Share, okay.
Utusatin.
Yikewe. I don't know if I need to move it over. So here we go. K2 News, Santa Kahini, Kawanigi, Lily Hope, Handit Dahin, Tlech 1,000 Dana, or Handit Dahin, Handit Dana, Dujit Akawa Jesh, Way Native Arts and Cultures Foundation Dach, Way Dana, Nacheen Kadus Ne Schlinket, Du Ich Guchlach, Guchlatu, Janwu Hawutachki Ka Ti Wudi, Yadashli, Yati nachin kadusne. We janwu hawu tahihi yes weft ka ti woody yes warp. Yidat janwa ahlun hate cha yes ach away Alaska Fish and Game Department. Yes janwu hawu tlech yiyat ku a tak iti de we hawu kunach atlen yeti. Tak iti de tlech atlen janwu iti nach yes nachen kasne guk. Chai tlech shayada hain uawut. Climate change to adach. Yak a janae lily hope. Hooch. Ka lily hope shrinkechenach sai yisikuge. Lalanya is her middle name, but I don't know her shrinkechenach. Dusak.
Hefaseku.
Wushkin den de at. You do it.
Yeah.
Huchue. I took Shauna Gates' approach of don't worry if it's not perfect. Just give it a try. Goodness.
That's cheese.
Cheese. Donna 8.
Ahuni. Goodness cheese.
Kunda hinsa awe qaneya anashkuk awe ade katisneye we nahin. Question kat qaki jini nach ayaya yidat qane. Ya has anashkuk. Ach nachwe au shkuk ade katisneye we Lily Hope ka Dorica Jackson ka Achoa Chakuta tsu Clarissa awe kanachoe du iyo klatu ya hasu shukak we du hu shukshani kik ya tleika khina wasatu sak
Early Candelaga.
Jenny the knot.
Yeah, awe kan chish. What do ish awe unat hajawe do sai ayatlanat. Llanat aya llwcach adi saich sati, hu awe llwcach adi yedich sati. Ye awe kanach hatu wasagu. Ya hashuka a has hatagu konchian hachagu kagu. Has du yach aya yejetunei. Ya haji iti. Wan kanins yisat yak e awe. Ya achtu klach achtu yak e. Ja, kuchte yen de gut away. Ja, nacheen katis nee. Ka yatetsu. Lle neit shall would the yechi. Ka yak seed. Ja, our dachi. Ye awe achtu was a good ye just the cut at. Has our schoon. Ja, uhan su would to so cool. Ja, hast du jich aya atwasku aya ya Canadian ya Lily Hope ka acho hast du inyeji ne with the ark to Dolores Churchill ka do seek ka klein gwash tesh klein gwash tesh wuda ha gwash wait to Ḳukaháa nachawe has au shagug. Ya ach tuwasagu, kanachawe wutasaku. Ya ach tla du ish du tla, hu awe a kawas nean, ka hu awe ya ada agen. Ya kuk awe has au ak. Aqa away. Has our hoon. How? Ilchish away. Atina khaya titlach konach. We chakudach aya. One kanins chudechi Dolores Churchill Kaluli Hope Hastil Khait Khaya Khoach. A museum at Udaki Hiti a Yike Hawutin Kawutusatin. Dolores Khwasatin Aya Bekak Kakhwasaku a day our Akuye. Achawe Ushtachaya Kausake. Katsu Ayahwa Ak. Khwasaku Yidat. Hutsu Lily Katutla. Museum a Yike Haswutian. Nacheen Hasausatin. We cut this ne shubu a de aya yan a kausin ya yiska has ausatin ha klesh hosatin ya dayach a joy hasu wush da hasa kausake a ka awe tsu wush she hasa kausane we curator klesh has awasku klesh has to yisayach a kakach to need like klesh has to yi aya Kone aya ye haset kwa ka ishi kesh museum yite ye good di kesh hasa was ko ha a yich sati ko ye awa kone su wushkach tu saku ya GET kadisne ka da ak kesh hatu wa ashko a kat aya hasak kwa ak a chweach tu asaku tsukagach tu ak and chish Gwashia I did Cajun winnets ganach kleid kach dasa I tuasagu. Gwash at the woos, gwash you chatong, just how you chatongi dat. Ya shinget you chatongi tak ye hawutien. Chakone aya at hin chukach at haguchlahash ye owa. So we're down in the deep waters for a bit. So we're gonna just float around on top of the water and switch over to English for a little bit, see if anybody has thoughts or questions. That was great. That's what I was hoping it would be, just conversations about stuff going on. I think we should just keep it going so everybody has a chance to go, and then we'll find another prompt. Although Wednesday, I'm probably going to issue just a short challenge that you guys can work on in groups. I'm looking forward to what you come up with. But now you're ready, because I told you what's going to happen. Thoughts or questions?
Cheers to all of the news reporters today.
Yeah.
One interesting thing inland, Janmu, long ago, Wajaji, there used to be a type of snowshoes called Jaji Chagu, and they were clawed, so you could climb up icy hills, and they used those goat horns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those what?
Goat horns.
Tish.
To make,
Janwu Shady.
yeah, shady to make Wajaji Chagu. Dig in and climb.
So those of you who do language assessments with me know that sometimes I ask the question, tell me something funny, and sing it. And this Achyet ki yis away yechwasa unicorn. Shishedi gaudan. Shishedi gaudan. Kleinach ako ashingichtu altu yes shishikoshkasnik echanakawani yatayach. Kliat ge awa a katchatse wakak. Wasaye isa a unicorn. Kachwa kawe kachwa kanachawe a katchatse wakak. A joey wake out. Ichwasa. Shahorni Gaudan. Not, I didn't say it. Someone else. Sheesh.
Hey, once I do a sock, I'll share my screen.
Oh, yeah. So I would start with Yi Wakshi Yi. Or maybe I'll say Yi Wakshi Yi De Ye Kakwasane. That's probably what I would say. So then you're just saying, like, I will demonstrate it in front of your eyes. I think that works. So we don't have to have screen in there, screen share. Because the sharing concept would be claiming it together. So you could say, Wushkachtu dehin, we're going to share it. But that means we're going to all claim it. So that's something, we use that with the kids quite a bit at the nest. Woosh naidahin, woosh naidahin. But yeah, I would say, Yiwakshi works pretty well. And that also, like, to demonstrate, that just means to demonstrate something to people. But then you can also say, Dasa karshachit, what I wrote, that would work as well. At the end, if you wanted to specify. Good question. Yeah.
I heard a recording. Herb Bradley was talking about when the Nanyai first came down the Stikine after the flood. They called out to everybody, and he said they had some kind of horn that was like he was talking through it to talk to everybody because they were all on the yauk. But I've never seen one like carved out anywhere.
They used to make potlatch horns as well, which I think was had a reed inside of it, and you blow, and then it makes this really loud noise. There was Vernon Asp, who was a Tlingit and Tahltan, is a Tlingit and Tahltan artist. He made one. Okay.
I want to say something. Yagi K2 radio, Gunashchishwe show was today, and they had a bunch of Haida songs on it. It was really interesting to listen to the Haida and sort of just get sounds maybe that were similar to Tlingit. I know it's not a related language, but they do have the unvoiced L, yeah, and I kept hearing cha, and I was thinking, I wonder if it's the same as our cha. But somebody in the show was singing some songs, including Somewhere Over the Rainbow in Haida, and they were using harmonies and sort of more modern arrangements, but just beautiful, just gorgeous.
Okay. I think Fred Olson puts that show together. Really amazing. Okay, Okay. Anything else? That was fun. Like we just keep using it. We keep trying and not worry about getting everything perfect. And then I think that it just, from my perspective, it just gets easier, right? Like I'm very impressed with what you folks are doing. I'm amazed. Or Achyakutvuni, there it is. Achyakutvuni. Gonna cheesh.
Eat Ḳukaháa Gautier. Skasneek Slas Kega. Qua. Yuhanga. Da 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 da. Cha yukik on igaak du se. Shana Kate away. Jin kat gao shanachich. Si ati tat yin. Sainach ka. How do a jak. Kwan kan khan. Plus shada hani a. Kan hun. Kwa. Ye hasya sika. We kuajagi. We uchikia. Tlach khat uya. 10 hours ago on a cold, dark night, someone was killed around the town hall fire. There weren't many people there, but they all said the killer looked a lot like me. Ashkashnikayanach. You kick this just in. Yes, Kashnikayana. More to the story. We shayadahini a. Ye khatyasika. Chaguna ange sa. Chekle. Clef. We gotta look. Clef a kugajagi tus. Kusti khasikan kwa. Clef. Do eat kakwatan. Tlachuni. Do shut. Do jigayik. Ye khat. Guganayan. The judge said, son, what is your alibi? If you were somewhere else, then you won't have to die. I love life, but I said nothing to him. I had been in the arms of my best friend's wife. Ye away, ye dat kwa. Yashkasnik ayanach. Kukwati. That's all for now. More later.
Novella, huh?
I didn't know what to do because all I've been working on, I've been obsessed with this song and I never read any newspaper articles.
Did it da did it. Fine business, old man.
Well, that's for people who remember what a telegraph or Morse code was. Before computers.
I thought it was just rock and roll, man. I didn't know.
Ye Khwajin, yes, Lady Gaga at Chie
Shawat gaga awe ach sati. Gynnes tish tlach nach shikudzi. Yek echa. Kausaku, hayejini. Shtuqa khatati idach. Chish. Yak Lady Glagla. Shawat tla. Goodness, cheese. Yak echa. Ye awe. How? Ya yidat qa ye chigach ne yata dat. Ye khwajien hatuasaku. Ya khawe. Ya achtuasaku yishagugu aya ade de shechya yata. Perfective. Ya atwudne. Ye awe. Positive, perfective. Eka aya ye atwudne. So again, just to recap this positive perfective, we want to be able to nail this so we can look up any verb, throw it in the perfective for any subject combination. The object you can also change. That will sometimes cause a little bit of extra contraction. The subject is the biggest part that creates a change. So a positive perfective means it did happen. It will always have the perfective marker y, not a time marker, just says. We'll look at this in terms of whether or not it has happened. So you can have things that are perfective right now. Au dagan, au saku, au satin. Those are all things that don't change, and some verbs don't change for time. The driving thing is the event. A positive perfective will have the plus I classifier, and we're not talking about the ones where we say yak e satini. That ends up with a different mode. Just a straight positive perfective. It happened, it became this way, went there, those types of things. That means your only classifier options are ya, di, kli, kli, si, zi, sh, j. Well, you will realize that in this case you have ya and everything else. As far as pattern building goes, the ya ones will be different. All the others, the prefix will be exactly the same. You will change one consonant, D, L, D, L, S, D, DZ, SH, J. That's the one thing that will change. So sometimes we're marking this with C, and then the C means switch, which put whatever consonant is in that classifier. As far as the stem variation, well, let me make sure the chat is open. We're just still going with Gaga, okay. Lady Gaga has taken over the class. We'll invite her. Hade, Lady Gaga. Okay. So for the perfective, really you have three things to think about with stem variation. Is it open? Because they're the same. Opens are the same. Is it closed? Or is it either glottal and ejective are also the same? So even though we say glottal and ejective, the biggest thing is those don't go low. Just remember that. They don't go low. It's the only thing you got to keep in mind. If you look at a verb theme and that theme is marked high, if you see the stem or the root marked high, it does not go low. Just keep that in mind.
My eyes are dilated, so I cannot even read the screen.
Okay. As far as what the stem will be like, you have stem variation, then mode, then you have the conjugation class. Those three things work in concert. So the mode is perfective, a positive perfective. If it's 0 and open, it will always be long and high. Ḳukaháa, because that's a 0 verb. Any verb that's a 0, you're going to end up long and high. Everything else, long and low. Ḳuta, I slept, long and low. For the closed, the rules are basically you have two options. All the zeros are short and high. Everything else is long and low, but that gets overridden by the verbs that don't go low, so those are long and high. Khwashat, That's gotta stay high. Shot is high every time. Okay, so that's the stem variation. So here it comes down to 0 or not. So it's a very common pattern in Tlingit. It's this way for zeros, it's this way for everything else. Any questions about that?
Yeah, for the glottal being long or being high tone, can you please help me understand what that means? Because it goes low, like in gach to da'at in hortative form.
Well, a glottal means it's marked high. So shot is a good example. It will never go low. Like even you might have a perfective negative is often low. A future negative is always low, but it'll stay high. So you'll say kek, kesh kek was shot. It stays high and it breaks the pattern. Because you would expect it to go kesh kek was shot. I won't catch it. Kesh kek was shot stays high. So the reason, and sometimes the title, like what it's called, is a little confusing. It's called glottal because in Tongass, that would have been shot.
Oh.
That's why it's called glottal. So this frozen high tone comes to us from Tongass, from Tanta Tlingit. The ejective is just because when it has that ejective at the end, it generally just doesn't want to go low because it's hard to go low and then have an ejective at the end. But just no matter what it's called though, just remember, if you see it marked high, it doesn't go low.
In the perfective?
Ever.
Okay.
At least shouldn't. There's always gonna be some weird exception. Like it never fails. Like you go teach someone Tlingit, and you'd be like, it's like this every time. And then you go look up an example and it's not like just
where would it be marked high? Would that be marked in the theme of the Eggleston database, or where would we see it marked high?
So anything from Harry Edwards dictionary forward, marked high. I don't know if it's marked high in the verb dictionary. I'd have to, well, let's go take a look. So, whoops, if we go look at the verb dictionary, let's see. So here we are. So we're going to jump down to the roots. We'll just look up catch and see what comes up. So it just says yashat. So I think it's just something that it wasn't fully understood. So they got classifier stem or root. So they got classifier and root. What they didn't have is stem variation. And so the other thing that they didn't really have in here is conjugation prefix or the conjugation type, whichever one you want to talk about. So if they had marked that, they would have had pretty much the complete verb. Those are the two things that this verb dictionary, it just didn't have. Because at that time, I don't know if it was fully understood that those were the components you needed to understand how a verb works. But if we look at, let's see, we'll just go into here. So we see tlech. So that's just fine. That's just regular tlech. So we see it low here. We see it long and low, long and low. Although this one I think stays. This one should be marked. Okay.
There was a short and high one. It was progressive imperfective.
Oh yeah, there it is. But all the rest are long and low, which is weird. It's almost invariable. Okay, we'll just close that. So here's shot. So we see it marked high. So it's marked high, it won't go low. So of course there'll probably be one that does. Open up thing. Okay, so we see high, 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 high. This is where we'd expect it to go low. And I would also expect it under the future negative, but it stays high. The one thing that's different about the way that Eggleston documents verbs and the way that I am documenting them and James Crippen is in Cable is this little tilde says the stem has variation. It's variable. But what we're saying is their stems are always variable, but there's a few of them that are invariable, so we mark them with a little X, the little cross thing that's up there.
So I have a question. When you say that people are, marking them differently, is it because it's we're transitioning to a more current way, or is it that I'm just curious? So if Carrie was doing something now, would she be transitioning to that way? Is it a Greek?
I don't know. So within the language community, there's not always
Agreement?
I would like it if we all went outside and just birds were singing and landing on our shoulders and we're all being nice to each other. But basically, the suggestion came from, and as things went through stages where like it was really Jeff Lear and Richard Dowenhauer doing the majority of the linguistic work, and then it was Jeff Lear and Carrie Eggleston and Richard Dowenhauer. And then James Crippen came onto the scene and was kind of doing a lot of his work geographically outside of Tlingit country, but made a lot of, I think, really great suggestions. And some of them were to don't mark the thing that's very common, mark the thing that's uncommon, and just teach it as stems. Just they all have variation. Then you just mark those handful of ones that don't. And some of that stuff really made sense. And so he and I would talk quite a bit. And just as the sort of political situation and other personality situations went, he and I were talking quite a bit, and Seth, and then James and Carrie were sort of having their conversations as well. And so trying to sort of get everyone to come to the same place would be good. So I recommend we sort of make some of these shifts that James has been talking about, but they're not huge shifts either. So it's just saying like, that's how it's marked here, but this is how we're going to mark it in the future dictionaries and stuff. Good questions, folks. Okay, but sometimes we got to look at this stuff and then just put it into action. Once you put it into action, we'll start to see it. So when we look at these themes, we'll say, I can actually predict how this is going to be based on this sort of, and I can come back to these charts until I memorize this information. That's a big part of moving through, I think, Tlingit grammar. So the next part is the prefix. What will the prefix look like? And for a perfective, there's only so many options, right? So here's your ya classifier, di, si, zi, tle, tle, shi, ji. So you can look these up for I, we, you, y'all, them all, someone. But the thing is, if you look at the ya, you got chwa, watua, yi, or iya. This one is usually a zero conjugation. Yi, wu, or uwa, also zero conjugation. Awa, wadua. The rest, like if you look at all of these, they are all identical except that one consonant changes in the classifier. So what you can learn is how to just change that classifier but leave the rest. So what you're committing to sort of memory is these two patterns. Chwa, chwate, watua, watude. And then that D could change to an S, DZ, L, DL, SH, or J. All predicted by what the classifier is. So you can say chwasaku, watusaku, because then once you know what the stem is going to be, you can just change that stem. I know I'm saying just, And it's not like it's easy stuff, but it's just saying this is the pattern. So you could say watusaku, watusateen. Right? It's going to be the same. Watusagut, we let them in or out. Neek, watusagut, we let them in the house. Or probably watusagut. And same thing. So you could say khwashetu, I taught it. Wutushetu, we taught it. Yishetu, you taught it. Right? So then just sort of coming back to here, putting this onto different verbs until we start to internalize all of these patterns, which we're going to do through a bunch of prediction drills. But this chart exists, and what we could, just print a little card that has it on there, and you could use it while you need to remember how to put a perfective together and say, oh yeah, how do I say you all did the thing, or y'all were jumping? Well, jumping would be tough. You seem to be jumping around.
I think tattoos.
Yeah, there we go. Thematic tattoos. I'll go get them. Let's go get them. Although the danger is we might change how we write something. We're actually going to adjust how we. No, I'm just kidding. This one's set in stone. Etch it into the petroglyph. Make it into the rock. It will change if you put a thematic prefix on it. But the thematic prefix kind of doesn't even really. This could be ka or ya or tu or ku or sha. It could be any or shu. So you'd say shukhsi and you'd say kukhsi. But that part doesn't affect it. So usually a lot of times is we'll just write this as CV. And you'll see like you could just plug in it. Even if you had 2 or 3 thematic prefixes, the only one that affects it is the last one. The ones in red, someone remind me why these are in red? Because those ones will switch to the M. Kamde, kamde, kamse, kamze, kamshe. If you're an inland speaker, those are the ones that will switch. So up here you got a small variety of that will. But down here you got a lot. Okay. The other thing is there an object? Because the object will then put the extra on there. So let's watch some of these in action. We did some of these already. So somebody tell me. So this shows you everything. There is an object. Yes. There's no subject. Can't use a subject. We're not going to use kha, tu, I, and ye. We're not using it. We're only changing the object here. So we should expect khat, I, 0, not a. Then ha, ye, hus, 0, and k. Oh, I'd say there was a question in the chat. Kudu juk. That's what I would say. Someone was killed. Kudu juk. Okay. It's an L classifier, so the classifier in the perfective positive must be what? Oh, just a classifier.
Hle.
Hle. And then this is marked as high, so it never goes low. It's a 0. So a 0 closed in the perfective will be, what will the stem be?
Short and high.
Short and high, every single time. Closed 0, short and high. Closed non-zero, long and low. Every single time, every single time. But it can be overridden. Like if this was na, which it isn't, then it would still stay high because it's marked high. This is where you'd mark it high, right in that theme. Okay. Okay. I think we already got this one. I am dirty. Chat pushechech. You are dirty. Single you.
Yitzlichek.
Yoshechech. So this will be chech, 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 all the way down. I, ha, and ye will all cause contraction. So for all of those, they would also trigger the M switch for the inland speakers. Imchechech. The M to the L is kind of tricky, I think. Imche, imche. It's not too bad. Okay. Make a quick change here. Okay. They are dirty. Single they. Yeah, away. We are dirty. How or ham yeah, away. You all are dirty.
Yitzlichek.
Yeah, away. You or yim they all are dirty. Yeah, away. People are dirty. We're looking for an object pronoun. How is that what I said? This one would go right to the k though. Like okay. Okay.
Why do you keep the W?
Well, so you could have.
Oh, is it? Okay. Is it because it's always W or WUU in every one of those?
Well, yeah, the perfective has to stay with all of these to show that we're using the perfective mode. So when you have k and y, you end up with ku. Like, so you could say kudzati or kudzati. But those are two different modes, right? So kudzati is right now, kudzati is it was, so in that case you get exist and born. So you could also
Sorry. So when you said ku do a juk, is it KOOW?
yeah, I would say KOOWDU. And so if it's ku do a juk, if that's, so it's in the chat, ku do a juk. Just looking at that phrase, what are the things that we can tell? We should be able to tell quite a few different things about that particular verb based on that form. Like the mode, the transitivity, we should be able to tell the classifier, and we should be able to tell the conjugation prefix. All of that is revealed in this one mode, in this one sort of mode of the verb.
Zero class.
Zero classifier, because we see. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I keep interrupting. Object intransitive.
Well, it's transitive because we got k and d.
Oh.
Could do a juk. So in that case, you would have and it's sometimes hard to tell whether that's a k for because they're identical, and if the verb has k built into it as the aerial, you cannot have k. It locks up the object pronoun spot. for k. So it has to be ka.
Say that again.
So if you have k, which is the aerial, like kudzati, kudzage, kuati, then that takes up, because for the fourth person object, you can have ka or k. But it's usually gonna be k unless there's an aerial prefix in there, then it has to switch out to ka. So you can say ka kudzati. You could not say kudzati. You couldn't double them up. It kind of prevents that from. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the verb wants the fourth person object to be k. But if the verb has the aerial k, which is identical, it'll push that verb to switch k to ka. Okay, so now we got zero classifier, fourth person object, fourth person subject. What's the verb mode?
Perfective.
It's perfective. And what's the conjugation type?
0.
0, right? Because it's short and high, so it's gotta be a 0. Kutuwajak. Someone killed someone. Grammar team with grammar. So we went through this before, and we did a bit of review. But what we're going to do on Wednesday is look at the negative form of this, make predictions on not dirty. Then we're going to sort of see what comes after that. Then we're going to just start looking at a number of things. Cooked it, didn't cook it. We're going to go to tied it, didn't tie it. So we'll just do a number of verbs, but as we go through, we'll review these things so that I say, okay, if you're going to learn how to use this verb for perfective, is there an object? Yes. Is there also a subject? Yes. What's the classifier? It's a 0, so it needs to be ya. Okay, is this open or closed? It's closed. Now, what is the conjugation type? Also 0, needs to be short and high. Duk. All these things are predictable, but you do have this set of like 4 things. But as I sort of look at a theme and I want to know this verb, those are the things I look at. Object, yes. Subject, yes. What's the classifier? What's a 0 group? It means 0 or ya. So that means didn't tie it. I should expect it to be 0 and do. But we'll get to that. Any last questions?
So maybe we should hold off on the tattoo.
No, get the tattoo. And then even if we change it or it's wrong, you'd be like, I was there.
Goodness, sheesh.
Is gach the same as duch
For tying?
for this type of conjugation? 0 classifier. Will you be able to substitute these gach in for everything else in duch?
Oh, for like to cry out or something?
To cry, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, once you get this, because the goal of learning all this stuff is to get off the book, right? All the books are so helpful and wonderful, but we want to get off book, and that's our big goal. So we go down to qach, and here's cry. So here we're going to look at this one. So we see there's a subject, there is no object here. It's a 0 classifier. However, it's ga. So that means it should be long and low in the perfective. So if I'm going to say I was crying, what would I expect it to be? Somebody tell me, then I'll open it. Ḳukaháa. So we go down and we get Ḳukaháa. 2 A's on either side, right? Long and low as it should be. Yiqah, wuqah, awaqah. And then the goal here with all of, even though there's a bunch of stuff around this, we want to eliminate all guesswork. We're guessing now for a lot of it, which is fine. That's how we learn. But then we get to a point, and because it's ga, that means the future must have K in front of it. It's non-negotiable. But it's also no mystery as to why some verbs have K in front of them. Because I know some learn, they just start throwing K in front of all the futures because they'll hear it sometimes. It's totally determined by the conjugation type. Just like if it's qa, there must be yay in front of it. So we're going to learn that too. Once we get a perfective, then we'll do a future. We'll do a future, then we'll do negatives. Then we'll just keep sort of messing around with this stuff, see what we want to do next.
How come someone cried is awagach instead of ku duagach?
That is a really good question. I would expect it to be wuduagach. However, and I don't know why, but a motion verb for a fourth person most commonly, or quite commonly, takes on what looks like the third person object when there's a third person subject. It makes no sense. So you would say awagud, someone walked there. That's how you would say that. So that's good job spotting that. That's a strange wrinkle that Tlingit has for motion verbs that for some reason is used in the oh wait, we gotta go to this one. Oh wait, this is a singular? Yeah, this is also a singular thing. So that's a good question. I don't know why, but I do recognize the pattern. It takes on a motion verb pattern. But it's probably because this is a verb that changes from a singular form to a plural form. Like if we looked up another one that does that, that's not a motion verb, is ta. And we'll just look at that. And then we'll cry, and then we'll go to sleep. But don't worry, like no matter what you're seeing here with like, oh, all this stuff I don't know, all this stuff I don't, we're building on the stuff that we do know, using that. Because if you can use perfectives, you could tell stories, you could do news stories. And I think we should all like come up with a plan to do some of these, to make a little news thing, like just 15 minutes once a week. Everybody reads a little piece of news. That'd be just so wonderful. So here we've got na. So I should expect khwa ta and what? Wudua ta? Oh, but it's not. They don't have it by person. Yeah. We'll have to check with the speaker. If anyone's working with Keishi, ask her how would you say somebody was sleeping? Would it be Wudua ta or awata? Okay, more mysteries to unravel. Fun stuff. Benchi Shuhan, Kachonach Jini.
Goodness, cheese. Lingi took the recorders as well.
Goodness, cheese.
Goodness, cheese.
Echana.
Cheese. Goodness, cheese, Penny.
Sheesh.
You go out, Gwen.
Johansu.